Hello trainers, and welcome to the making of the thumbnail for Froslass, which was the 4th episode in our 2023 holiday special, and otherwise overall episode 41 of Ditto's Dirty Desires. This took me about an hour, which was technically split over 2 days. I was doing some of the outline, and then my attention was requested elsewhere, so I just picked it up the next day. With this one, it was a lot of, obviously, snow and ice theme. In the episode, it is supposed to be a nightmare of Froslass finding you in the middle of the winter mountains, and then luring you with kindness into her domain, which is why her one hand I have in a kind of beckoning type of way, like an offering her hand to help guide you. So starting with the colorations, I started with the eyes, as I most often do, and then I started working on the cut-ins on her headpiece. Not fully sure what you would call that, like her skull carapace or what have you, but making sure there's a nice thick indent. This is one of few where I definitely had to push past my tendency of making very faint shadows, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Using my Ditto pink to replace the typical white. Once again, thankfully it seems this pink goes... There's barely any colors that this pink doesn't seem to go with, which is very nice. The main challenge I had with this one was the precise geometric design on her arm sleeve things, because with the other Pokemon designs, they're more like organic, they're more natural, so there's a lot more sway in how it can go, or the patterns are a lot more simple shapes. This was one of the first Pokemon that had a very... I hesitate to say intricate, like a step below intricate, but it definitely had more complex shapes than just circles and spots and stripes. So yeah, doing the general outlines, doing the blues in the undercarriage. This was about where I had to then pick it up the next day. So didn't get too far, but it was very easy for me to just pick it up again. You'll also notice I flip back and forth to the reference in this one more often than the other ones, because again, it has such a distinct pattern work on it that I was trying my best to be fairly close, because with my general design rules, it's like, as long as you get the clear impression of what Pokemon it is, then that's fine, but I really wanted to give the due diligence of those shapes on her sleeves. It was a little hard for me to think how it would be on her raised hand. I could have probably looked at more references of Froslass being, like, in the anime, but I think I pulled it off fairly well. Yeah, so for the main one, I just used the straight up pre-made shapes with the... Oh, what is it when it's six-sided? Is that a hexagon? Oh my god, I don't know my shapes. I'm pretty sure that's a hexagon. I think it's like 5 sides is pentagon, 6 sides is hexagon. The stop sign shape. But I used the pre-made shape for the simple side, and then for the bit that surrounds the spot, I used a wider version and then just erased it. I also had a little trouble keeping my layers straight. You'll see some, like, memes and jokes sometimes about the terrors of being on the wrong layer, but it was a little tricky for me to think ahead on what should be on what layer. Yeah, so doing the little wraparound ribbon. The ribbon was a bit more brown than I expected, because the color sources I try to take directly from the Pokemon for whatever shades I'm doing, and it was definitely more of like a rust red than a bright crimson that my brain registers it as. So I thought that was pretty intriguing for the brain. So now doing the ice horns, I guess we'll call them. The little, clearly meant to be ice chunks, little nubbins on the top of her head. This one was also one where, excuse the noise happening upstairs. Cat is on a rampage. But, yeah, doing the based outline first. For this one, I mostly used the methodology I had learned doing Miss Magius gems, where you have the shadow on the inner core, which I'm no scientist, but I believe it's kind of a limitation for how far light can permeate through the object because they're not perfectly translucent. So it gets to a point where it can't quite make it through all the way. Kind of similar to water, is how my brain symbolizes it. So yeah, getting the outlines. The outline for the ice horn in the forefront will be changing a bit. One, because the outline was on the wrong layer, and so I had to erase it anyway, because I start playing with effects. But two, also, I just wanted to reshape it to be more similar to the reference. Gave it a little bit more height. So yeah, this is the shadow bit I was talking about, where you can tell it's a little more solid and opaque with semi-translucency. And then on top of that, you do the outer shine. So this would be like the surface shine, which is how you can have both shadow and shine on a crystalline-like object. See, I've been learning. Yeah, doing Miss Magius for the 2022 holiday specials definitely helped a lot, and you can see my videos on that in the making art playlist. So yeah, I was also playing around with some of the effects, because there's like a shell, kind of a crystal, I forget exactly what it's called, but it makes the crystal shapes. I'll be using it later in the background, but tweaking around with blurs and the shape formatting. Yeah, and here you can see me futzing around with the outlines a bit, trying to figure out what layers are what. See, and now we get to a nicer part. With all the outlines done, we can just go into some nice, simple block coloring. So yeah, the sash is definitely a little more on the orange side than I had expected. Because when I look at it, my brain registers it as like a kind of crimson, but when I take it directly from the source, it definitely seems to be a little more on like the scarlet orange side. So doing the block coloring, again, I kind of love the color palette that the pink added to this. It seems pretty neat. Like, it's almost like a retro blacklight color set, almost. Like, if the blue was a little more intense, it definitely would remind me of that more. Yep, and then going into all the nooks and crannies with my Ditto Pink. Yeah, this is definitely one of those Pokemon where it's... Again, I slightly hesitate to say intricate. It's definitely more complex than some of the other Pokemon I have done. Like, the one I do after this is Gengar, one of the simplest little blob boys to draw. So it's nice to have a variation here and there of more complex designs versus just big heavy blob boy. And still trying to figure out where on earth all my layers are. This one I was definitely very sloppy with the layer labeling and organizing. It wasn't a catastrophe, but it was still a little finicky. It's also interesting messing with a Pokemon that it has some common anatomy, like humanoid anatomy, but they're just slightly wrong enough. You kind of have to be careful with positioning and the posing, because her arms are attached to her head, you know? So it's like there's no shoulders really, and for her to be like reaching out, and they're also more ribbon-like, so it's like playing with a gummy arms, but you still definitely want them to register as arms. I think that's also a fun little brain teaser puzzle to do with this art. And doing these black lines, I had debated making them the color that they're on top of, but I felt that would make it a little hard to visually translate when it gets zoomed out, because as a reminder, these are typically posted as pretty small. Like, you see them big for these videos or for the YouTube thumbnail video, but they are primarily used for my fur affinity, which makes them itty bitty, like the size of a avatar icon type of thing. I'm doing the ditto shine, because I'm trying to do better not to leave it too far last, because it gets to a point where I almost forget. It's funny, it's one of my favorite things to do, but it's the bit, especially with a more complex Pokemon shape, when I'm mostly done with it, it's like I want to be done with the piece type of thing, and it's like, oh, but I need that shine, I need that ditto gleam. You know, it really adds an extra layer to the piece that I couldn't live without at this point. And it's also kind of nice with it being a frosty Pokemon. I can do a little extra shine, and it's like that kind of like window stain frost feel. Yeah, so yeah, the inner ridge of the eyes, I originally had a bit of a darker color, but I thought that was a little too harsh, so it just looked like another stripe rather than the actual inner edge. So I made that a bit of a brighter but still modestly dark pink. And then we're doing the shadows, because I really wanted to keep the implication of this being like a hard cut in to the headpiece, because I think that is a fascinating little design tweak to it, not twerk, Jesus Christ. Gives it more depth. There we go. Yeah, so zoomed out a bit, and I believe I make it a little darker later, but I definitely had to fight, because when I initially was putting them on, it was much lighter shadowing, and then it's like, that doesn't translate well. I need those hard shadows. Starting to become less afraid of hard shadows. So yeah, this was that cell effect that I was talking about before, that I tried on the ice, and I think it was pretty nice on the back. Gives it somewhat ice, and then I decided to do a reverse of the spotlight shadow and doing more of a frost shadow. Initially, I was a little worried. It didn't feel like it was translating too well. Like, I got the little granular, there we go, granular effect to it. And then I erased a bit in the center so you could see her. And then it's once I started, yeah, you see me still tweaking, trying to make it more winterized. But I eventually figure out, once I put the DDD and the number in, I made a fun effect of doing a hard erase over those. So it kind of looks like when you rub the frost off of a window, and I think it turned out really nice. Yeah, for the numbers in the background, I use original colors from the Pokemon. And for the numbers, I'm going to be doing that double layer. But yeah, you see me there. It's like, oh, that's a nice effect. Oh, I like that. You know, it's little things that make it fun. But yeah, you can see it there. I went back and added it after for the 41, just because the orange and the purple were both kind of dark enough. It was a little hard to differentiate them at a distance. So I added that sharp blue on the back, and I think it helped it pop so much better. But yeah, that is Froslass. Hope you enjoyed this video, and if you would like to see my other videos, they are available. If you would like early access to these, or the original episodes that these were made for, you can hear them in their entirety on my Subscribestar and Patreon. And we will be getting into, if not already underway, with this year's Halloween episode special. There will be 5 episodes, and we would love to have you with us. See you for the next catch.